Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your attendance here. This webinar today is an hour webinar, and we're going to be covering the top return on investment workflows with Ideate software. My name is Glynis Patterson, and I'm the director of Ideate software. I'm also a licensed architect here in the States with a background in a variety of building type designs as well as construction management. More recently, I've been working in technology, and I've had the opportunity to be a speaker at industry events such as AU and Built, and I know I've met many of you on today's call at those events, so it's nice to have you all here virtually. This presentation was originally slated to be in London, and I have to say I'm very sad that I can't be in that great city today. I know some of you on the call were going to be attending, and I'm really glad that you're able to make it today, but I'm also happy to welcome people from other locations, and presumably we are all working from home. So I wanted to just do a quick poll, and we're going to launch this poll, and we're going to just take a quick vote and see, or poll to see where you are all hailing from today. My goal would be to get all of the continents, but I'll take just 2 if I can. Give everybody a few more minutes to log in. I know people from come on, someone from the Southern Hemisphere. I'll take anybody. There were some people from the Southern Hemisphere who registered, but I figure they might not be able to join us. All right, well, thanks for everybody. If you had a chance to do that, let me remember what I can do here. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in a second. And then I believe I can share the fun results here. As you can see, we have 46% of you are coming from the London area, which is great. But we do have people coming from other places in the world. Welcome everyone for today's call. And I'll go ahead and hide that poll. All right. So as I mentioned, our goal today is to take an hour. Oops, that reminds me, to cover our top most popular return on investment workflows with Ideate software. And this list that I'm going to be going over today in reverse order of value or return on investment, ending with the highest return on investment, is based largely on customer feedback. We have done a lot of surveys, and I'll be sharing a little bit of information about that at the end, but it's also based on our experience in talking to our customers worldwide. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about Ideate Sticky and how it addresses a fundamental need, which is to link tabular or Excel data into our Revit projects. That's just something that Revit can't do, and it's something that people waste a lot of time trying to do. Then we're going to talk about Ideate apps, and we're going to cover these 5 workflows, which are all delivered by Ideate apps and which all relate to more day-to-day Revit productivity challenges. Then we're going to move on and talk about Ideate Explorer and show how Ideate Explorer saves time and sanity by making complex models easy to navigate. And then lastly, we'll end with Ideate BIMLink, and we'll look at just 3 of literally hundreds of customer-defined workflows that are supported by BIMLink that all relate to large-scale data editing and have the most substantial return on investment value. So let's begin by talking about our number 10, and again, reverse order here, number 10 problem that we're trying to address here in the workflow, which is, the problem is Revit, of course, does not have a way to link Excel documents into the Revit context. And so Ideate Sticky is a solution that we make that does exactly that. And what we're seeing here on the screen is just a few examples of what we call stickies. The stickies, the first sticky there shown is a plumbing fixture code table. This is a kind of table that your local jurisdiction might require to have on your drawings. It doesn't specifically reflect BIM data about your project. It's just it's a requirement that you have pasted there. And so you can create that table in Excel, and that's exactly what it's going to look like on the Revit side. And we also have a document issue record as well as a cut sheet showing some light fixtures. And all of those file types are supported by Ideate Sticky. So the benefit of Ideate Sticky is that any change that you make to your Excel, your Word, or your PDF documents, they're going to be automatically updated into your Revit model, which is a pretty powerful time-saving workflow. The benefit really is that it's eliminating any of that kind of data that you're currently just simulating in some way. So you're not needing to duplicate that information, so you're reducing your liability and you're saving time. And then the other really big benefit here is that you can have one of those Excel or Word or PDF documents, you can have a single source that's outside of Revit, and that source can be linked into many different projects. And so you can be effectively changing the Revit project outside of the Revit context. So that person who owns that sticky data or owns that Word document data doesn't need to know Revit in order to be updating that information. So let's go ahead and take a look at how one does a sticky. In this example, I've got my sort of a cover title block here, and this item here is a sticky. And you can see in this example, it is what we would call a code worksheet, and it's the kind of thing, in this case, it's an energy code requirement worksheet, and you just need to fill out for each of these sections where the items are included on your documentation set. So I'm going to go over here and show you the Excel file here. I'm just going to open it up. And you can see that's what it looks like. And you can see that it's not today's date. So I'm actually going to change it. And I'll fill out a couple more things. And we will get rid of this yellow and make it a lovely peach because it's a peachy day. So I'm going to go ahead and save that information, close that file. And now I'm going to close my Revit file. And actually, before I do that, let's take a look at Sticky here. All of the solutions that we make are located on the Ideate software tab. I am currently working on Revit 2021, which has recently been released. And everything that I'm showing today is applicable to Revit 2018, 19, 20, and 2021. So if you're not up on 2021 already, that's totally fine. So we can see here, I've got an abbreviation list, I've got a document issue record here, and I've got a sticky code list here. And you can see that this checkbox is connected here, the auto update option. What that means, and I'll show you here in a second, is that when I open my Revit project, this information is automatically going to refresh. So I'm not even going to save this. I'll relinquish, and then I'm just going to reopen the project, and we can see how this works. So right now, as we're opening, just like it would with a linked DWG or with a linked Revit file, what we're doing in the background is we're looking for that source document. You can see here the sticky update message kind of appears for a second and then disappears. And you can see here those changes that were made automatically. So it's a great way to sort of collaborate with people that aren't directly on your team or maybe aren't even using Revit. And you can see here the quote at the bottom of the slide here from a customer who's a sticky customer. You know, this could be a very tedious, time-consuming task, and it can be done in just minutes. And our survey results from our customers indicate that typically they're saving about 5 to 10 minutes for each document that they're using this for each time they're issuing it, because every time you issue it, you would need to sort of manually update that information to make sure it's accurate. So this can have a significant return on investment value to you. I will say that a lot of our customers who are using Sticky have anywhere between 2 and sometimes 40 stickies in a given project, depending on what they're doing. So that's workflow number 10. Counting backwards now. And actually, before we continue, I'm just going to pause here for a second and ask my colleague, Richard, do we have any questions about Sticky that I should address before I move on to the next workflow?
We do not, but I want to tell everyone, don't be shy. Ask a question or just say hello in the question window. I always like that too.
Thanks, appreciate it. All right, so let's move on. Before we do our next workflow, I want to ask another question. My goal is to keep you on your toes, make sure you're awake there in your home office. I want to ask you, have you ever, you or your teammates, ever wasted time solving a visibility issue? And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can launch this poll here. And not have you ever, but how much time have you wasted doing this? This is anonymous. You won't ever be asked later for this information. But this is something I can tell you that the solution we're going to talk about next is part of Ideate Apps, and it is called X-Ray. It's one of 9 of the tools that constitute Ideate Apps, and it is a tool that we designed for ourselves. I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to tell you that I have wasted time and continue to waste time if I don't remember to use X-Ray, which I do now. But because visibility issues in Revit are complex. And there are days where I just can't remember all the 50+ reasons for why something might be invisible. So I'm going to leave the poll open for a few more seconds, and then I will go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and close it. And then I'll go ahead and share back on the results here. So this is what those of you on the call have registered as for your answers. A lot of you said between 60 and 90 minutes per project. Some of you said, another chunk of you said between 0 and 30 minutes per project. So it really does depend, but I think most of you agree that there can be some significant time spent in these kinds of things. And actually the scariest thing to me is that when you don't know if your team is wasting time, because a lot of times they will futz with it for like 30 minutes before they actually tell you that they have a problem. So go ahead and hide the results there. And now let's talk about X-Ray. So as I mentioned, Ideate X-Ray is a problem that's a solution that targets the problem, which is too much time wasted on visibility. And you know, the questions can be, you know, why is my text missing? You know, why can't I see the level in this view? And really, how much time will I waste before I ask for help? The way X-Ray works, and we're going to see 2 different examples here. The first example is we're going to look for some text that is missing in this view. And you can see here, one of the things we can do is we can actually make a little crossing window here, and it'll show you all the things that exist in that area. So in this case, I pick the text, and then you pick find element. And X-Ray is going to go through about 50 different reasons and hopefully return the information that you need. In this case, annotation crop is the reason. And for each sort of reason, there is a more info button, which goes to a very detailed help file and has pictures, and also often has a link to Autodesk help. So this is a learning tool. Sometimes there's a fix, not always. In the case of annotation crop, which is very simple, we do have a fix, and it just turns off the annotation crop. The next example here, though, is way more complicated, right? The question is, why is the level called footing missing? And you can see there the red line represents where I'm expecting to see a level line. So in this case, we're looking for a grid or a level line, and we know the name of it. So we can type the word footing here and pick the level, which is sometimes hard in itself. And then again, ask X-Ray, you know, why is it invisible? In this case, view filters are the reason. We can see the little screenshot, and if we read below, we can see that it's actually telling us the name of the filter that is the cause of this visibility issue. And we can even open up the VG dialog box there and fix it ourselves. So it is definitely a time saver. I love this tool. I use this tool probably, honestly, once a week I use this tool because I just refuse to learn and remember all these silly rules that Revit has about visibility. And we do a lot of forensic research into files as well. But I really can't say enough about how helpful this is to me. But don't listen to me, of course. Here's another quote from a customer that is talking about Ideate apps and how they're all time savers, all the 9 tools, but that X-Ray is this customer's favorite time saver. And so on average, customers have told us that they are saving between 36 minutes each time a staff member on a project has a problem. So when you add that up, if you really think about the time that you are wasting looking for that kind of stuff, it really has a very high ROI, I think. The next tool that we're going to talk about is one that targets a very substantial problem, which goes not as much to time directly, but more to liability. And it's, why are things missing from my project? Why are dimensions missing? Where did my keynotes go? Or, what happened to my fixtures? And this is a very, very important problem to address, the unintended deletions. So this tool, which is also part of Ideate Apps, is called Smart Delete. And we're going to begin by just making a selection set. So we just grab a couple things on our screen, and then we launch the tool called Smart Delete. We can see from Smart Delete that there are 5 elements selected. Maybe we didn't even know we had 5. There's some lines, there's some dimensions, and there's a floor. The lines shown here do not have anything selected, as no dependence. The dimensions also have no dependence. But when we pick the floor, we can see that the concrete floor in itself does have dependence. We call dependence. These are things that will also be deleted. If I delete the floor, these other things are going to also disappear. So we can double click on these things. So the element here called projection screen is a keynote. We can double click and see it. We can double click on any of the dimension strings, and you can see as we're double clicking here, we're opening up other views. So many different views are going to be impacted when I delete that concrete floor. So maybe we didn't intend to pick it, but we have an opportunity here to kind of pause, remove it from our selection set, and now we have a selection set that is safe. And Smart Delete's telling you good news, nothing else other than the things you've picked here are going to be deleted. So that is our number 8 top workflow for ROI. And Smart Delete here, it really is all about sharing critical information. And again, I think of this as sort of a learning tool, right? A lot of us, particularly when we're new to building information modeling, aren't really aware of all the relationships. And I'll be honest, even when we were developing these tools, I wasn't fully aware of all the sort of interdependencies across elements and model and annotation items. So for me, this has been a learning experience as well, and it's super easy to use. And so, the customer here is saying without Smart Delete, we would be searching for a needle in a haystack. And it's really hard to put a value on this in terms of ROI, but I think we all know that the challenge of unexpected deletions is substantial. The next workflow we're going to talk about also relates to Ideate Apps. And this targets the problem, which is simple on the surface. It's not possible to copy a sheet. If there's something on a sheet, you can't make a copy. So we invented a tool called Clone, which is part of Ideate Apps. And we defined the task of cloning a sheet, which means that we're going to make a new sheet. We're going to edit the sheet properties, make sure that it shows up in the right part of our project browser. We're going to copy or replace existing views so that we can maintain our sheet layout, right? This is the first floor plan. We want the second floor plan to be in the same place. And then also things like schedules or legends, we want them to also be in the same place potentially on the copied version of the sheet. So let's go take a look at how this works with Clone. We're beginning with our sheet, which is M201. It's our overall first floor plan for our ductwork. And we're going to make a copy. It's suggesting a number M202. And now we're going to replace the first floor HVAC duct plan with the second floor. And we can type some keywords in there to find the HVAC ones. And then for the legend, we can decide to not copy it or just reuse it, which is what I want to do in this case. So I'll go ahead and hit the clone button. And in the background, we're doing all these things. We're copying the sheet properties. You can see the sheet discipline there in the properties palette. And we have 2 sheets now that are very similar, and that was our goal. Without this kind of tool, you're spending a lot of time sort of futzing with it, and also, again, for someone who's maybe not familiar with all the sheet properties, there's a really good chance there's a lot of question marks are going to end up and it's going to go to the wrong part of the project browser. So it's a very simple solution that automates a whole series of tasks. And this is one of my favorite customer quotes lately that we've had about Clone. It's like using a lighter instead of 2 sticks and a rock to make a fire, and it saved me at least 4 hours in one day. And on average, our customers are saying it's saving them about 1 to 2 hours per project. Obviously, some of you might get a lot more value out of that, but I think you'll agree that it's very easy to use and really takes a lot of guesswork out of how to assemble a sheet and make it similar to another sheet. And the last task here that relates to actually, it's not the last, I'm sorry. Number 6 workflow is also related to Ideate apps, and it's going to tackle numbering challenges. We know that managing numbers within our projects takes a lot of time and can be very error prone. And there's a lot of different ways this can manifest in your projects. It can be, what happens if a room is added or subtracted, after I've done some numbering. Or what if my customer is requiring some sort of new numbering scheme, or I need to do a Kobe scheme in the middle of the project, and I need to change everything. Or how can I coordinate my equipment numbering or my fixture numbering if the rooms or spaces are managed in another file or by my partner who I'm collaborating with? And all of these kinds of problems are addressed by Ideate Renumber, which is part of Ideate apps. So let's take a look at a very simple example here. We have some rooms. The first room in our sequence is 101. It's the vestibule, and we realize it really should have been 100. So we're going to pick this line method, and it's going to renumber all the rooms starting with 100. And then when I make a change like that, in a lot of instances, I also need to update the doors. And this video is not sped up, it's just in real time. So you can see how quick it is to change your numbering schemes for any of the elements, in this case, both rooms and doors. But we have customers who are using this for lights, parking spaces, curtain panels, detail views on sheet. There's a lot of different ways in which you can use renumbering. It's very fast and it's very effective, and it's a rule-based system to help you with your automation. And this is another customer quote about using it actually on a sheet. It says, I used Ideate Renumber to renumber details on a sheet after moving them around to match the clients and our standards for a project. So the way in which you do the number is something that you can embed into the project and really standardize, so people aren't guessing what is the room or what is the numbering schema that I'm supposed to use in this project. And as I said, it can be used for lots of different element types. Parking is one of my favorites as well too. If anybody's had to do that, that's an incredibly boring task to have to spend time doing. And the number 5 workflow we want to talk about today is a bunch of tasks that all relate to sheet and view management. And I know many of you in the call have spent time putting together sheets, making sure they're organized well, making sure they match across the set. And so we've made a tool in Ideate apps called the Sheet Manager, and the Sheet Manager does a lot of different things. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of the things that Sheet Manager does. And the first thing I want to show you is how you can use Sheet Manager to drag and drop multiple views onto a sheet. So in this example, on the left-hand side, we've got sections, and we've searched for sections, and we find 5 of them, and we're going to drag and drop them onto M107, which happens to be visible in the background there. You can't do that with Revit. You can't drag and drop 5 things at the same time. You also can't control which viewport type it's using, and we can. So we can also specify the blank area within your title block so that, as you see here, these are well organized within the space that's available on the title block. And you can see here it's using the title with line, which is what we want our section type views to use. And we might want our legends to use a different viewport type. And so Sheet Manager is is all about sort of filling the gaps and boosting productivity related to these kinds of tasks. Another thing that you can do with Sheet Manager is copy and paste legends and or schedules from one sheet to many sheets. So in this example on the right-hand side where I see my sheets, I'm searching for the word legend. I can find a legend. You can see it's highlighted there when I select it. And then I can right-click and copy it. Then I can go and look for the sheet or sheets on which I want to paste that same information, and I can multi-select. I can grab a whole bunch of them all at once if I need to, and then right-click and paste on sheet. And so the result is that in this case, the legend, the keynote legend, is showing up in the exact same space on all of my title blocks all at once. And again, this is a feature. All of these features are available in version, let's see, this functionality goes back to 17, so 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So don't forget the older versions when you're looking at Ideate apps. And then the last set of functionality that again all relates to this sheet manager has to do with renaming both views and sheets. And here on the left-hand side, we're going to be looking at views, and we're just looking for a bunch of views that were named with a suffix of -am. And someone thought that was a really good idea at some point in the project, but I'm in charge and I don't like that, and I really prefer that we spell out the word analytic there because those are our structural analytic views, and so I can quickly batch rename them. You can do the same thing within the sheet context. So on the right-hand side, I can search sheets and pick the rename option. And I can rename the sheet number, which is what I'm going to do first here. I'm just going to get rid of the dash. I don't like the dash, and I'll do a replace all. So you can do the replace all, the prefix, suffix. You can also just edit in the grid itself. You can actually just pick in there if you'd like to do that. But it's all about doing some very simple batch editing, replacing of sheet and or view names. And actually there's one more because we keep adding to this. And for those of you who've used this in the past, this is a newer feature within Ideate Sheet Manager that I love. And this is one that lets you take a bunch of views that are not yet placed. So in this case, I've got 4 structural plans that are not on a sheet yet. And I'm going to pick an example sheet, a matching sheet. So I've already got, one of them set up, and I can see there it's got a legend on it, and I want that legend. And I'm specifying my starting number there. And what this is doing, again, kind of like Clone, but on steroids here, I'm taking a whole bunch of tasks and aggregating them. And I've now got a bunch of new sheets, and they're named, and I can edit them there if I need to. But you can see there, each one of them has a legend, and also that the plan view aligns with the one that I picked originally. So again, it's automating a whole bunch of tasks to bring a level of standardization and really take a lot of guesswork out of a sort of sheet production workflow. So that's our number 5 top return on investment recommendation for our customers. So it's all about streamlining those tasks. And I love this quote. It's about reducing the time you're spending on monotonous tasks that we don't want to be doing in the first place. So before we step on to our next workflow, we're going to be transitioning and talking about Ideate Explorer. I wanted to pause here. Richard, are there any questions we should talk about related to any of the Ideate apps workflows before I move on?
I don't believe so. There's been a few questions, so thanks everyone, but I think most of them have been answered in the chat window or the question window. So I think we're good to go. I will add one quick thing is I was doing a presentation yesterday to a large architecture firm, and the BIM manager said Ideate Clone is his absolute favorite tool in the whole wide world.
Yeah, we definitely get that a lot. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. Okay, so onward. Let's go to our number 4 top ROI workflow, and we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, Ideate Explorer. And Ideate Explorer is sort of our oldest tool. It was developed back in, I think, Revit 2010, so it's been around a while, and it's one of my favorites. Ideate Explorer is all about helping you with lightning data discovery and manipulation, and it's really all about helping you navigate through your complex Revit models. We all know that these models, as we layer on information and the model gets more sophisticated, it's difficult to find and make selections. And that's really what Ideate Explorer is all about. And that sounds simple, and it sounds like, you know, that shouldn't be sort of a high ROI task, but it is, for me, certainly, and I think a lot of our customers agree, it's really difficult to imagine from working without Ideate Explorer. It's that invaluable. It's in the way in which it can help you find, select, and manage elements in the model. I'm actually going to transition here to Revit and give you a little example of this. One of the things that we want to remember when we use Ideate Explorer, what we'll be presented with is information about the elements that are in the model. So in this case, we see a long list of things, and we can expand those things, and we can use them to make selections. We can use them to, you know, make selections here and make changes over in the properties palette. This is a tool that works side by side with Revit, so I can easily select here and modify over here. You can also use it to double click and find an element, and that's its other view. So here I've been able to very quickly identify something that maybe I'm looking for. I wasn't quite sure where I could find that in a view. I could go on and spend an entire hour talking about the different ways we can use this tool, and I would encourage you to learn more about it online, which I'll show you here in a second. But I want to show you, I know some of you on the call are familiar with Explorer, but I want to show you maybe a little secret gem within Explorer that makes it even more valuable. We're going to challenge ourselves here to look at light fixtures and make sure that none of them are flipped. So I'm going to come down here, and I can, like all of our Ideate tools, there's usually a search task bar at the top here where you can type in some sort of keyword, and I'm looking for light fixtures. So I've now picked all 264 light fixtures in my project. You know, I could come over here and make a view or selection box, so I could look just at those light fixtures if I wanted to. Let's do that. So there's really the whole project, right? But I could come here and then also isolate them. So now I've got all of my light fixtures, but it's hard for me to know if they're all flipped the right way. So I want to come in here and just do a little quick check because I'm worried that they might be upside down. I'm going to type the word flip here, and what you'll see here is this is a list of all the properties that relate to lighting fixtures in this case. And the list of properties that you're going to find here is greater than what you're going to see in a Revit schedule, which means you're going to be able to do a lot more than you could with just a simple Revit schedule. So in this case, I'm interested in this particular property, and I can see, that there's one. There is one that actually is upside down. So I'm going to use this property-based query to refine my selection set. And you can see it's right there, and I can double click to kind of zoom in on it, and I can tell that it's flipped upside down, and I can go to a plan view and reverse that if I need to. So there's a lot to explore, and I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to go over to our help files and mention a couple key things about our help files. We're really proud of our documentation for all of our products. We spend a lot of time not just doing your basic, push this button, do this thing, but explaining sort of the why. We've just been talking about, within Explorer, we've been talking about query. And you can see here there's detailed information about how to use query. There's also detailed examples. These examples come from our customers. So we're not just sort of making stuff up here. So if we went to MEP examples, we would see in here fine light fixtures or air terminals that are flipped, as an example. Or you could come back up here to general purpose queries, and find how to browse sheets per revision. So there's a lot of great information here about Explorer, and we don't have enough time to talk about it today, but I'd really encourage you to check out our help files, and in particular, always take a time to go to the how-to section, because the how-to sections are generally where we're documenting the most frequently asked questions about how to use a specific tool. All right, so before I move on to the next workflow, are there any questions I should pause for, Richard?
It's funny that you say the help topics. I think I've answered 4 questions by just cutting and pasting information from our help topic. So that's another great way to use it.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to segue now. We're getting down to the end of our presentation, and the last product we're going to cover is Ideate BIMLink, and we're going to cover just 3 of the workflows that Ideate BIMLink supports. There are literally hundreds of workflows, and they all save time for our customers depending upon what kind of work you're doing. But these are the most common ones that we hear about where there's a really high ROI value. So the number 3 workflow for return on investment savings is targeting the problem within Revit, which is that it's not easy to create in bulk lots of elements if you need to. So it could be, how do I create hundreds of rooms, spaces, or areas automatically? Or how can I import my survey points so that I can use that to create tree or piping layouts? Or how can I predefine sheets, levels, or views very quickly? These are all things that are possible with Ideate BIMLink, that idea that you can bulk create Revit-based elements. So I'm going to just show you one pretty simple example here. This is an example that's actually covered in great detail online in our Getting Started guide and under Project Setup as a category. We're showing BIMLink, and we're showing specifically these examples, these workflows that are in the Create Elements folder. So the first one we're going to do has to do with levels. So we're going to export this data about the levels in the project and then use that Excel file to actually create new levels. So the first level, level 1 and 2, exist, but we're going to create level 3s through 6 by typing the word new. And this file that I'm showing here is one that ships with the product, so you can actually do this exact same exercise if you want on your own to automatically create those levels. Once you do that, once you have the levels, you can then automatically create a whole bunch of floor plans or ceiling plans by using some simple formulas. So in this case, I'm just using a formula maybe where the name of the new view is equal to the name of the level, or I can prefix it as we're showing here, the title on the sheet view. We're just going to use a simple formula where we're going to put the name of the project in front and use that title on sheet value. So we're going to, if you look at the project browser on the left, there's just a handful of views right now, but we're going to use we're going to import these 3 other links that will help us create views and then sheets and then viewports. We're not going to show them all here, but again, there is a detailed sort of instructions on how to do all of that online. We're going to add a custom property here for our new views so that they do show up in the project browser in the way that we want to. And you'll see here when we import, it starts out with just a handful of views on the left. And then you can see the results in BIMLink in yellow, always highlighting what's been changed. So a very quick example of showing bulk editing. But you can see here the important thing, one of the important things is that we are able to have somebody in Excel predefine lots and lots of views for a project and make sure that they end up in the project browser in the right place and have the right view template, etc., etc. So bulk creation, if that's something you need to do for sheets or rooms or model elements or furniture elements, all of that is possible with BIMLink, and all of it is documented in our help file. So I'd really encourage you to give that a try. And for those of you who are familiar with BIMLink in the past, I just wanted to add a note that we are always adding to our list of what you're able to create. In previous versions of BIMLink, you could create unplaced sheets, rooms, spaces, areas, key schedules and revision sequences, masses, and generic models. So those have been supported for quite some time. In November 2019, we added all the items in green. I'm not going to read them all, but those workflows to create those things are all part of the Create Elements folder that's available through the Browse Libraries portion of the user interface as I'm showing here. So, take a spin through that folder and see if there's an opportunity there for you to really save a lot of time. So now we're going to pause and take one more poll. For those of you, make sure you're still awake out there. I want to know, does your team need to create revision or issuance records? So let me go here and open up that last poll. And I'm asking, does your team need to create revision or issuance records? And everybody calls them something different. I apologize if I'm not using the proper terminology from your country or your region. We've had some people call them, sheet records, issuance records, revision schedules. There's lots of different ways of thinking about it. But generally, in my experience, customers do need to do this in some form or another. It's part of your liability tracking to make sure that when you issue an addendum, for example, that you have a record of which sheets were a part of that addendum or which sheet was part of that permit set, as an example. So I'll give you a second more here and then I'll close out the poll. And as you can see that most people here are either doing it now or think they should do it, which is great, and that in most cases it's needed for every project, that's been my experience as well. So good to hear that from all of you. So in that case, I think you should all be very interested in what we're going to show here, which is one of our number 2 return on investment workflows with Ideate BIMLink in this case. And the problem that we're tackling is that it is, as you probably all know then, it's very time consuming to create issuance records. And what I'm showing here is a sheet schedule, right, within the Revit context. And what you know is that you can list the current revision for every sheet and the description and whether it's been issued or not. So that's what we're showing, and that's what's possible in Revit. The problem, of course, is that what we really need is something like this, right? We need a list of every sheet that's part of the set and going across the top, every issuance and whether it was part of that or not, and if it was, what the number was and the numbering schema for that. So we need that kind of record. It's often part of the deliverable. It's often part of sort of how we manage and reduce our liability for changes that we've made. And this is something that can be automated fully. The image that I'm showing here is an Excel macro template that we offer to our BIMLink customers, and it is automatically generated based on data that comes out of BIMLink. And this was part of our survey that we've done our survey across several different years. We just recently did an updated version of the survey asking, are you doing this kind of task with BIMLink? And if so, how much time is that saving for you? And on average, people are saying it's saving them about 5 hours per project. So this is a clear example, I think, where you can very quickly justify your purchase of Ideate BIMLink. Maybe for this alone is what we hear quite often from our customers. I don't have time to show you this. We have full explanations, videos that show how you do this task with BIMLink. And we also show how you can then bring back the results into your project if you want to via Ideate Sticky. So it's a great workflow for our customers who have both of those products, and we have a lot of information. You can always email our support team if you're a customer, and we can give you access to the macro template file there that's shown. And the last workflow that I wanted to show you, and I'll promise I'll show you Revit in a second here, is really the number one return on investment for all of our products, I think, is that Ideate BIMLink allows you to do bulk editing of BIM data. It's something that is very time consuming, and it's very difficult to do in the Revit context, and it also has to then be done by somebody who is a Revit user. So with BIMLink, you can export the data out to Excel, make large-scale changes, and then bring in that Excel data as a way of updating your project. And let me go ahead and let's go ahead and go back to Revit here, and I'm going to go and close out this project and open another project. Save it. And in this project, one of the things you're going to notice when I first open it is that this project is actually leveraging the same sticky that we earlier modified. You remember we updated the date and we made it peachy. And you'll see here, same thing. So that same Excel file is actually uploaded into two different projects, and without any effort, it's being reflected here in this context. But that's not what we're going to show here. What we're going to show is just some very basic data editing with Ideate BIMLink. So I'm going to go ahead and find, in this case, the most simple example, which is editing sheets and views. You can edit any kind of data with BIMLink. You can edit equipment data, space data, room data. You can edit text, you can edit dimensions. There's a billion things you can edit with BIMLink, but some of the highest value things are the most simple things. So I'm going to show you an example here. I've got a schedule of, in this case, interior elevation views. So I'm going to go ahead and launch BIMLink and show you the basics of BIMLink. When you get started with BIMLink, you will have nothing listed in here. I have a couple examples already loaded into my project that I've used before. So generally what you're going to want to do is start by picking new. And then from there, you'll have a choice of browsing. We saw earlier references to browsing, for example, the Create Elements dialog box. So you can browse these sample links, and then these really are the workflows that our customers are telling us about. So you can look at your own discipline or a particular kind of task if you have to do COBie related data, for example, or if you're interested in health check information and or project standards or quality control. There's a lot of different examples. They all come from our customers. So you can browse and get started that way. You can also look by category, so you could look up views, or the simplest thing is often to just use a schedule, right? So in this example, I have a schedule and it's listed here. It's called interior elevation, so I can just get started that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. And it's going to try to map all those data categories, and you can see that they map across. And this is an instance-based link, so it's showing me the 59 views that meet this criteria. It's in this case mapped across the filters that were on that schedule, sort of came across as well. So it's looking for only these kinds of elevations, and it's included these properties over here. So on a very simple level, I can just take that data and export it out and create a new file, open the file, and I can make changes. Problem is, here I can do things like, specify, and I'll do that. I'll go ahead and pick an appropriate view template maybe that I want, and I can copy down. I don't have to just pick it every time. So I can do that kind of change, but really what I want to do is sort of clean up the view names. And unfortunately, I'm in that stage of my project where there's, they just have these silly, useless names. So that's not going to be very helpful. So I can do this change. I'll go ahead and save it and import it. And again, you'll see the changes that we're making are showing up in yellow, and we'll go ahead and import that and close, and you can see the changes that are made here. So, helpful, but not as helpful as it could be. And this is where you really need to take a look at the sample links. So I'm going to come back here, and let's say I knew I was interested in editing views. And you can see you can edit view references, view templates, view ports, or views, and I'm interested in views. And you can see here for views, there's this 1L schedule type. There's also all of these sample links that relate to views. And the one I'm interested in doing is actually a quality control one called Interior Audit. And the benefit of doing this using our samples is that we are, again, capturing what other customers have told us they want to do, and we're aggregating the relevant properties. So for those of you out there who are using Dynamo, you know that one of the challenges of Dynamo is simply finding the darn property, right? What property do I need? What's the name of that thing that I need to do that task, right? So that's the benefit of using these link definitions, as we call them. And you'll also note in this example that what we're seeing here are some properties that you are not familiar with because they don't exist per se in Revit. What we've done is a customer years ago said, hey, if I wanted to, it would be, I'd like to name the elevation, the interior elevation, after the room in which the tag exists. So we actually made some additional properties here and here, you can see them, to capture that and make that workflow possible, right? That's not otherwise possible. So we've added what's the orientation of view, is it north, south, east, west? In this case, the not north, south, east, west, but the angle that you can discern, or you could decide 0 is north, for example. So we're putting out a lot of other information that would help you with that kind of task. So now I'm going to create an Excel file, and here's that data we just saw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the title on sheet, because I know I'm going to have, for interior elevations, I am going to have some duplicates, and I want those duplicates. I want those to be okay. And I'm going to say the name of the view is going to be equal to the name of the room number, which is right here. And I'll make a little dash and this. So I'm using a simple formula, and that's the name of my interior elevation view. And I'm going to copy it down like that. And then I'm going to save my view, and now I'm going to bring it back in. So I'm looking at this schedule. I don't have to use this schedule link as a way to necessarily edit that data. So here's my other file, and you can see all the data here. You can see over here the yellow parts that we're editing. And if there were errors, I've of course made this so that there are no errors. But there's going to be errors every once in a while, like maybe the view doesn't exist. That would be reported here, and you can save that information out if you need to deal with it later. And then we can go ahead and close. And you can see here, in a very short amount of time, I've given logical names to a lot of these elevations. So just one example among many of how to use BIMLink to do large-scale changes to your project. The changing doesn't need to be done by somebody who knows Revit. It doesn't need to be done while the file is open. So that's very, very powerful. And really, to our customers who are using Ideate BIMLink, we routinely hear that they are saving easily 20 hours per project, and sometimes significantly more than that. But that's sort of the average across both large and small firms that we hear about. So we've covered a lot in a short amount of time. I know Richard's been able to field some of your questions, which I'm grateful for. I wanted to just mention real quickly, if you are interested in sort of doing your own research or looking more closely at return on investment, I would encourage you to just go to our website and type in ROI. We have a number of documents that we're publishing that are the results of the surveys that we've recently completed, and they're coming out about one a week in our blog, so you can look for that information as well. But I think really the best thing you can do is to give it a try. You can use a trial version of all of our software, and so you can test drive your own return on investment. And with that, I wanted to turn it back over to Richard and find out, are there any other, are there any questions I can answer or things I can show? I'm so excited. We've got a few minutes left, I think, so I'm more than happy to do a live demonstration on anything if there's a need for that. Richard, anything?
Well, really, it's just piggybacking on what you're displaying there or showing. When you were creating levels, there was a question about, well, can I rename the level? And so the idea, of course, is that you can rename levels, but you can rename views as you showed, but you could rename families. There are so many different, like you said, workflows that support renaming and organizing information in the way you need to.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So
Thank
maybe
you.
even show the link like if you just type in rename, there's a lot of rename options.
Right. Okay. Let's look here. So in the browse, my favorite thing is to come over here, type in a keyword. You do want to make sure this is checked, and then it'll go through all the folders at once. And so Richard's mentioning, there's actually this link, which is a very comprehensive link. It's found under our project standards folder. I can see that just based on the name. And this is a multi-category link, which the BIMLink version of multi-category is way more comprehensive than the Revit version. So you can see here, these are all the things that we include in our multi-category link. And you'd think, why would you ever want to export data that relates simultaneously to air terminal tags and air terminals? But the answer is so that you can rename them. So anything that's in white here is something that you can edit, and you can edit in this context here in BIMLink itself. So if you spot just small changes, you can do that right then and there, or you can export out to Excel and rename all of them at once. Thanks. Well, I'll stay on the line if there's any other questions.
There was here. I don't want to put you on the spot, and I want to make sure I actually need to research this. The same gentleman asked about being able to relink models from a renamed folder, but I'm not sure that particular path is accessible within BIMLink, the actual link path, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Well, sorry, brought to mind a totally different question, but I will try to address this. In BIMLink, these connections, so the one we were looking at a second ago with interior elevations, these are not live linked to the Excel data. So you import that data from any Excel file that you want, but it's not capturing that path. It doesn't remember, it doesn't try to re-find it later. So there is no storing of that kind of information if that is what was being asked. I will mention what came to mind was actually sticky. So in case this is somebody else's question, I'll just bring it up. In sticky, we are linking to that file. So you can see here, this particular one, which is actually stored as a relative path, and you can see it here. And then these two, if you look down below here, are saved to this folder and this file in that folder. And you can select them both and then do an update from and path them to a different folder or a different file if that's needed instead. And that's a new piece of functionality that's about to come out in Sticky. All right, well, I'm at the top of the hour. I'm so excited that I was able to not go over. That's a rare day for me, so it's going to be a great day. Thank you all for your attendance and for all your good questions that you've lobbed over the wall to Richard, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks.